Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mosaic Podcast. The beauty of this show for me is that it allows me to introduce you and for to introduce myself also to people who will open up our lives to new perspectives, to new ways of seeing the world. And that's particularly true in my guest today, Renata Maniaci. She is someone I met really very sort of spontaneously. We were having a conversation. She asked me where I was, where I lived. We were over the internet. I told her I was in San Diego. She said, "Oh my God, I'm going to be in San Diego this weekend." We went down to see each other. She had me on her podcast, which is Let's Get Metapodcast.com. We had just a beautiful moment where I felt like I was meeting a sister that I haven't known ever in my life. And I still don't know much about her. But hopefully through this conversation, through this time together, you're going to get to know her. I'm going to get to discover more about her. But I know one thing, that there's something contagious in her. There's something beautiful in her ability to just share her vibration with people. And I want you to think now differently than you've ever thought before. Allow the possibility for new ways of seeing the world to come in. In one of the most interesting ways, and I'm going to see how this works because I think I've already messed it up. Ren is gender fluid. And instead of using he and she uses, they use they and them. And so it's awkward for me right now because I've never done it before. And I want to share with you that. But I want to see if in the conversation with they and them, in the conversation with them, we can get to a place where it starts to become okay. Let me tell you about them. Renata is an awakening agent, a conscious content creator, a podcast host, a Columbia University grad, and a former Fulbright Scholar. A Fulbright Scholar, that's one in a handful of people. Ren went from full-on research, academia, and science into energy medicine, massage school, and spirituality in under a year. Ren continues to make that journey from the head to the heart by allowing the soul to be an embodiment and to embody more and more, and assisting humans with their awakening process. She founded a company called Hana Healing Arts LLC. They founded a company called Hana Healing Arts LLC, a spiritual healing practice using energy medicine, consciousness clearing tools, and angelic helpers to serve in one's awakening. Most of this work is now done one-on-one in Ren's donation-based wake-up calls and in group sessions and courses on Patreon. In 2020, this business evolved into Up Awaken Productions, which creates transformational and conscious content designed to assist humanity through the awakening process. All of this you can get from the website www.renatamaniaci.com. It will be in the show notes. Don't worry about getting the spelling now. You can see her podcast on Let's Get Metapodcast.com. And you can visit her on Patreon at patreon.com/Let's Get Meta. And with that, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Renata. Renata, welcome to the Mosaic Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Danny. That was an amazing introduction. I love it. Everything is perfect.
And that was sort of difficult for me because this idea of using new language is so interesting. So it makes me want to just ask, like, what's behind all that?
Hmm.
if you don't mind sharing it.
I don't mind at all. And actually, I just want to point out that I have so much love for you as you're speaking, and this greater awareness that that's an uncomfortable thing to do, especially if you've never used different pronouns before. It's a really uncomfortable thing to do. And it's a learning curve. And
Yes.
the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it just struck me as you were speaking that we are all in a really uncomfortable space right now. A lot of people are experiencing a lot of discomfort and a lot of uncomfortability right now, given our social distancing situation, our global COVID-19 situation. And we are being stretched. We're being stretched past what we have been used to what is normal for us. And that's what came in while you were doing that wonderful introduction. And so I want to point to that because it's coming up, it's all around us, and we're making forward progress into completely new paradigms. And I'm not saying that the pronoun one, is necessarily going to be a thing, but we are certainly approaching brand new times, brand new paradigms, and we're going new places, not only as a culture in the United States, but also globally. This
Globally,
whole
yes.
world is changing right now.
Yeah.
So I don't even need to go, I don't need to go super into it. The basic summary of why I use they, them pronouns is that I never, since I can remember, I never felt like I was fully like male and did the masculine man things, or fully female and did the feminine woman things. And I was okay with that. That never gave me a complex at all. But what I never did understand about this planet is the dichotomy, the duality, like the utmost separation in some places between those energies, the feminine and the masculine. And
Yeah.
how, and what really came through for me, especially as a kid, were things like, I got to a certain age, like 9 or 10, and like and most of my friends were guys, so that was a thing. Like, they would whip off their shirts because it was too hot out in the summer, and then I did it once, and an adult told me that I needed to put my shirt back on, and I didn't understand why.
Yeah.
And I couldn't play football when I got to be in 6th grade because girls didn't play female bodied people didn't play football. So I never and it wasn't until my 20s where I recognized that as part of different communities, there people actually are designate themselves as being gender fluid and feeling very balanced in those feminine and masculine energies. And so when it's kind of like being queer, right? Like, I identify as queer and gender fluid. So I didn't know that was even, I didn't know it was an option to be with a female bodied partner until much later in my life, when I saw other people doing it. It
Yeah.
was like I was given permission. So same thing with the gender fluidity. It was like I saw that people could go by they, them pronouns about 10 years ago. And I was like, that's me. That's
Wow.
me. And the thing is, because of how I look and how I present some of the time, I can present very feminine some of the time, and I can present very masculine some of the time. And because of how I look, I will always, always get she, her. And it doesn't bother me nearly as much as it used to.
Yeah.
I like there was a time when it actually like hurt to only be recognized as she, her. It felt like people weren't seeing the entirety of who I am, and I've moved past that. So when you or anyone else says she, her, it doesn't hurt me, it doesn't bother me. I can love you, I smile, and I see that's where that's where we are in this moment, and that's okay.
What I love about this conversation already is just um, how important it is for us to understand each other in ways that we don't understand each other currently. Because and I love your ability to say so clearly what you feel and to express the way in which all this has come to you. Because there's never any intention in my part consciously to do anything that would harm anybody.
Of course.
But in this conversation, what I realize is, even unintentionally, sometimes, without understanding what a person believes or thinks, the mere words of normal words could slightly offend somebody when we have no desire to. And so
No
how
desire
important,
and no idea.
and no idea. And
No
so,
desire and no idea.
and so how important it is, again, the beauty to me of this mosaic, this book that I wrote, is it's a book that just invites people to really listen to one another. And how important it is to just listen to what another person is saying and temper ourselves in a way that doesn't change who we are, but also invites other people to be free to be who they are. So I love already the change of perspective that we're experiencing in the first couple of moments. And thank you for being willing to be vulnerable enough to share that with us.
Absolutely. It's no problem at all. It's my pleasure. And this part potentially might be cut out. I keep hearing noises, and I've realized that I think it's your microphone that's hitting your beard sometimes when I'm hearing noises. And so I just don't want it to interrupt the listener's experience later as a fellow podcaster. So I just wanted you to know that
I don't
every
hear
once
it
in a while.
on my side. I don't hear it on my
good.
side, but I'll try and remain stable. I get
as long as it doesn't bother the listener, if it's not coming through in the end audio, it'll be great.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. What did your parents do?
Wow. Well, I was raised by my mother, and for the first couple of years, she had been an artist, actually a glass blowing artist, and had her own studio with her glass blowing partner for about 7 or 8 years before I was born, and continued that until I was about 2. And but since I did not have a father in the picture at all, she decided to, when I was around 2, she knew that we needed some more money, so she went to nursing school and became a nurse. And she did that for a long time as I grew up. And then at one point, she actually started her own non-for-profit clinic in our small town, because the Planned Parenthood had lost their funding and moved out of that city. So there was no health care for people who had no insurance. So she filled that gap with her clinic for a long time. And while she was doing that, she also went back and got her social work degree. Then she became an acupuncturist. So you can see that I had a really interesting and amazing upbringing with her.
So do you have any consciousness about how growing up without a dad was for you? Was that something that was painful for you? Was that something
Can you say that one more time? I just missed the question.
Yes. Do you have any recollection of what growing up without a dad was like for you? Was it a painful thing? Was it just the norm? Was it something you didn't even think about? Was it something you missed?
Well, it's interesting. It has different phases, right? So when you're in it and you're a child, that's your norm. However, as I got older and looking back, I can see, and in some ways, sometimes it still affects me. I've done a lot of work around this, but in some ways there was a very big sense of unworthiness, because I thought it was my fault that my biological father didn't want to know me. And so that, when I was growing up, on the one hand, it was completely normal, because that's just, your normal is whatever you are growing up in. And on the other hand, I knew that other people did have fathers, or at least 2 parents. And I knew that I didn't, and I didn't understand fully why I didn't. And luckily, when I was around 8 or 9, my stepdad, who I refer to as my dad, came into my life, and he's an incredible man. But our relationship, he's always very supportive of me, but he didn't parent me. And so it wasn't until much later that I actually started calling him dad. But but he is very much my father figure that I had in my life. Even though I would say pretty solidly that it was my mother who raised me and my mother who parented me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
That absence carries weight, but you don't really realize it when you're a kid. You just think that's normal.
Yeah. What really intrigues me, because I had it happen, because both my parents passed away when I was a boy, and when my dad passed away, my dad was my role model. He was my everything. I was like his mini me, before mini me's were around. And when he passed, I think what happened for me, when I look back on it now, is it was something so scary for me to live in a world where someone that I adored that much could be taken from me for seemingly no reason, that I created a reason. And the reason was that it was my fault. The reason was that I didn't wake up early in the morning to see him before he left to go on his trip, which had nothing to do with him passing away 2 weeks later, making love to my mom. But in my mind, it made me feel like there was reason and effect, that it was my fault, because had I woken up, he wouldn't have passed away. But because I didn't, he did. And I carried that with me for a lot of years, because I just couldn't understand how you live in a world where it's so scary, where people get taken randomly for seemingly no reason. Why do you think we do that?
That's the unanswerable question, isn't it? I think it's part of being human. It's part of this. I see Earth as a school. I see all the planets as different schools. I do believe that there are thousands and millions of other planets and thousands of millions of other experiences that we could have as an incarnated soul or a non-incarnated soul. So just being in a different place. And I think that Earth in particular is a very interesting place to have incarnated. And I think that the biggest lessons here are unconditional love. And you need to, I would say that one is the biggest lesson to learn here. And each of us comes with different programming and different past lifetime experiences. And so we each will need a different set of rules and and a different environment for us to get there, to learn unconditional love, not only for others, but that a lot of people say that starts with yourself, and that also starts with unconditional love for your creator, or for the universe, or for however you see why we are here and how that happened. So for me, those circumstances sent you on a beautiful, long path for you to become the person that you are right now. And for me, knowing what I know of you, you are very much embodied in the exact purpose and incarnation that you came to this planet for. So though losing your parents at a young age might be very sad, it led you on the journey that you're on. And it is this beautiful, loving person that I'm talking to right now. And that might not have happened, or it would have had to happen in a different way, if not that.
Thank you for making it more personal than I meant it to be, but I appreciate that also. What's really interesting to me is we speak because we know each other a little, and we live in the same sort of world sometimes, of things that are so commonplace to us that we use the language as if everybody believes it.
Right.
But you said a few things that I would like to go back to for those people.
Unpack a little bit
For those people who
Sure.
may not, which is that there are millions of galaxies, that we can reincarnate, that we can come here, that there are past lives that we've lived, because there are some people listening that may or may not believe in that. So can you unpack where that comes from? Are you comfortable doing that? If not, we can just glaze over. Because
no, there's no glazing over that.
Again, what I want people to see in this is the mosaic is all about looking at the same thing from different perspectives.
Absolutely.
So if Renata is blowing your mind now, I encourage you to let it be blown even more. There are things that I don't normally talk about, but I believe like she does, like they do.
Yeah.
and, and there's something that we spoke about earlier of being uncomfortable with this change, and that's okay. Like notice when I just said she, they, it wasn't like I judged myself or
You
put
did it
myself
though.
down. I made the change, right? Because I
It was
noticed that
great.
it was something that I wanted to do for this conversation. So
Yeah,
even just that of not putting ourselves down because we didn't get it right,
not at
but just
all.
flowing with it.
It's not about that.
So
Yeah.
let me set up the question maybe a little bit better.
However you want, I can jump in whenever.
Well, go jump in then. If you got it, go for it.
Well, I want to acknowledge that what you said is, yeah, in those last couple of minutes when I was speaking, I threw out a lot of concepts that might not be like super like, copacetic with everyone listening, or even something that they've ever heard of before. And I just wanted to say that I made the conscious decision about 2 years ago, to come out of what has been is it my most recent closet? I would say it was my second to most recent closet, which is this stuff, which is I used to, be a little bit more cautious about, like, when I saw my clients, like, do you believe in past lives, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And now I'm just, I've like just come out of that resistance, and I just speak my truth. And I don't expect anybody to change or listen or care or believe the way that I view this reality and our experience. And I'm not going to hide it anymore. So
Yeah.
yeah, I believe, it's not even, it's so far past a belief for me, right? It's more of my experience
Yeah.
is that we are spiritual beings having a temporary human experience on this planet at this time, and that no, Earth is not the only place that we can have an experience like a lifetime or an incarnation. And no, this isn't the first lifetime or incarnation that one has had. And I would be willing to say that to almost every single being on the planet, is that, and again, it's not about convincing. This is just about my experience. My experience is that there are many different realities, and that you've lived thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if not gajillions of other experiences, not all in human form. If we're talking about different places, there's going to be different forms. We can think of animal, mineral, human, and we can think of the etheric, things that aren't even in a three-dimensional reality. They don't even need to have a body. They're things that are more gaseous or more auric, or more kind of like blobby, but you still have consciousness, and you actually are, in fact, have the abilities to do more than we can in our restrictive 3D human suits right
Yeah.
now. So that's a lot. And how did I come to that? I think I came in with that. Nobody taught me that. Nobody sat me down and said, okay, like, reincarnation is real. I remember being in 6th grade. I remember this very clearly. And I was in language arts, and we were asked to write our very first like essay, and it was going to be a page long, and it could be on anything that we ever wanted to write about. And I wrote on reincarnation.
Wow.
And I didn't have anybody who would have told me about that. My mom's super spiritual, but she actually kept her spirituality like to herself much of my life until now. We're very close and talk about all of those things, but there's no reason. And I had spent the previous 3 or 4 years before 6th grade in a Catholic school that doesn't talk about reincarnation at all. So where did I pull that out from? And there's a lot of examples like that throughout my life. So for me, it's just a knowing, and it's just a memory, and it's my memory, and it's
I
not,
love it. I was a monk in a monastery for 10 years of a yoga teaching, and the man who was my guru was named Paramahansa Yogananda, and he was probably the first Indian to come to America and stay in America and
right.
bring yoga to America. And he said, if you could imagine the time it took for a bird to take one drop of water from the ocean and carry it to the desert and do that every 100 years, the amount of time it would take for the desert to become the ocean and the ocean to become the desert is the amount of lifetimes we've lived here.
There we go.
So if we think that it's been a short period of time, probably not. And I remember being in seminary, was studying to be a rabbi, and sitting down and listening, reading the Talmud, and saying to my Rebbe, this seems like it's proof of reincarnation, because they're talking about when this person reappeared as somebody else. And he said, Danny, I have to tell you, I'm going to look into it. But he said, I have to tell you, I never believed in reincarnation before, but I actually have to believe it now as a result of what you found here. So if you don't believe in reincarnation, and if you don't believe that in the possibility that you've been here before, no one's asking you to believe it. All I'm asking at this point is, what if your beliefs are not correct? What if my beliefs are not correct? In everything that we believe, do we have the freedom to let go of our beliefs and let something fresh come in?
Right.
And that makes for a beautiful, refreshing, revitalizing life. What scared you the most growing up?
I don't remember being scared a lot. Fear wasn't a thing that I'm conscious of having felt very often.
Are you scared of things now?
No. And actually, like in the last 2-3 months, if anything, my fear has almost completely disappeared.
Talk to us about that. Go into that, because there's so many people that experience fear on a regular basis.
Totally. And especially right now, people are dying of the virus. People are dying of other reasons, complications due to the virus, of being given antivirals, when that's absolutely not the right thing to do. But I am not a doctor. And so, yeah, in the past couple of months, I know this will sound weird to a lot of people, but my fear has almost completely been erased, because and this goes into the work that I'm doing right now too, and I'm not trying to go into that, but I'm remembering why I came to the planet. I'm remembering why my soul chose to incarnate into a human body on Earth at this time. And it's like, how did I explain it the other day to somebody? It's like if you were read a story when you were younger and then you didn't hear it again for 30 years or more. And somebody says, hey, did you ever read that story? And you're like, oh no, I don't think so. And they were like, it goes like this. And like, there's these people and they do these things and they explain the story to you. And little by little, you start to remember, right?
Yes.
That's what the last several months have been like for me. It's like I am remembering. I'm calling it the Great Remembrance. I'm calling this whole experience, this whole global experience, the Great Awakening. And I'm not the only one. There's lots of people that are referring to it like that. But I am remembering why I came here, and I'm remembering what is going on this planet right now. And it's the most exciting thing, not even just in this world. It's the most exciting thing for the universe right now. Like, we have front row seats, except we're actually all players. We're all in this play together, to not only the greatest show in the universe, but more than that, the next evolution. Because I do believe that what's happening right now, and what I've been remembering, is that so many of us, if not all of us, are here to help the ascension of this planet from a place of duality and darkness, where it's been for a really, really long time. And that placement, that low vibrational frequency that Earth has, isn't normal. And actually, it doesn't only affect Earth, it affects other planets. It affects the entire universe. So what I've been remembering is that so many of us came from other places in the universe to incarnate here because it was decided that this can no longer happen. What's happening on Earth is to some extent, you can think of it, if you want to be humorous with it, is stinking up the universe and this part of our galaxy and this part of the universe so much that souls all over floating in the universe, just being or on different dimensional planes, are like, what is that horrible smell? Oh my God, it's coming from this little spiral galaxy. Oh my God, that's Earth. What is going on there? And I'm
Right.
I'm making this a story, but this is what I'm remembering, is that there are volunteers coming from all over the universe right now, and for the past 50 years or so, who have incarnated onto this planet to become kind of like behind enemy lines and help to raise the vibration of this planet, because they're already from places that are more high vibrational than the Earth is, which is normal. There's lots of places that are in 5D, 6D, 7D, and we'll talk about the dimensions in a minute. But I'm remembering that so many of us, and people who have been on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years too, who have lived lifetimes here that long, that many times, it's been decided that the Earth can no longer stay where it has been for the last several thousand years. Some people give different numbers. Some people say 26,000. Some people say 25,000. I'm not gonna get boxed in like that. It needs to change. It has been decided that it can no longer stay ridden with these low vibrational frequencies. And right now, what we are experiencing and have been experiencing for a couple decades now is this gradual, grand awakening of this planet. And I remember, and so many people around, not just me, but around the world, are remembering what is going on here. So you can stay in the fear vibration. And so many people are, and my heart goes out to those people, because I don't want to minimize anybody's pain or anybody's loss of friends and family during this time, because that is happening. That is real. And nobody's taking away from that experience. And then I just also cannot deny the excitement that I am feeling in my soul for what is happening on Earth right now, because I know that it is going to end positively.
Yes.
And
For those,
the whole world will change.
For those people who are listening, who are just sitting with their mouths open, who have this sense of like, what is going on here? I want to invite you to just not try to understand it. I want to invite you to just listen to it. So often we try and figure out how this is happening, what's going on, when really, if this is new information to you, just listen to it. Let it come into you. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to agree with it, but just listen to it and allow yourself to hear something you've never heard before. What Renata is talking about, the Eastern teachings have talked about for a long time. And we are in the transference of what's called a Yuga. And there are 4 different Yugas. We have been in the lowest Yuga for now quite a long period of time. I think it's 24,000 years, according to Eastern Vedantic thought. Sure. And about 200 or 300 years ago, according to Yogananda's teacher, Sri Yukteswar, we have evolved out of Kali Yuga and are moving into Dwapara Yuga. Well, Dwapara Yuga is Kali Yuga is the energy, is the reality of form. It's the reality of separation. It's the reality of what Renata's calling a 3D reality, where there is duality, where there's you and me, where there's good and bad, where there's solid and where your body is not my body and my body is not your body, and we're different. Right now, we're in this beautiful moment, which is only the beginning of another 24,000 year cycle. So we're literally just on the very edge of only the second of a next elevation. And there'll be 2 more after this, if Vedantic philosophy is true, where we are realizing we are not form, we're energy. And we notice all of a sudden people are talking about energy healing, and people are talking about Einstein came in with the theories of relativity about how energy, and we're starting to realize that energy is becoming more and more a part of our reality. And you don't have to be a metaphysician for this. You have to be just a scientist now, because science is leading the charge through quantum physics and telling us that we are way more connected than we ever thought we were, that this universe is made up of something that is much bigger than we ever thought, and that how beautiful that moment is. So for us to be playing in this parts in this world as it's transforming makes complete sense. That some of us would think it's complete garbage, because we're still not quite caught up to where this is, because it's hard for us to give up our thoughts of what is.
Absolutely.
Right? And yet it really doesn't, gravity doesn't care if you exist, if you believe in it or not. It exists. And this field of energy, it's time for it to come, it is existing now, whether we believe in it or not. Look what we're discovering through computers and through all sorts of things. That I'm talking now to Ren through a screen, which when I was growing up as a kid would never have been possible. Right? I remember
Right.
Dick
People would have thought
Tracy
you were crazy.
I remember Dick Tracy having a little watch where he could talk to people and see people, and I thought, oh my God, that's so cool. But now we do that all the time. So
I just, yeah.
go ahead.
Do you have more to say
No,
on that?
go ahead. You go.
No, I love everything that you're saying. I love the perspective on Yogananda. There are several people in my spiritual community who also followed Yogananda before, and as their spiritual voyage and journey has taken them through that. And so I didn't know those terms that you were saying, and yet it is, it's one and the same of several different perspectives of the same occurrence of this great awakening that we are having right now. And to circle back and to kind of almost tie up a loose end of the conversation earlier, you asked me about the gender fluid thing, and this is actually for me part and parcel of why I'm so excited about this, and I'm not having fear about what's happening right now. You asked me what I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of anything right now that's coming to mind consciously. And as we move out of duality, out of the 3D and into, they say we are going into the 5th dimension, there is no duality. And so it is my own personal experience that I have not spent much time in a dualistic planet, in a dualistic dimension. Therefore, when I incarnated here and was told that I was female and must be a woman and must be a girl, it was confusing to me, because it doesn't make sense in the longer journey of my soul to be one of the two things, that you can't even have those two things without the other within a soul, within a being. And I just wanted to circle back to that, because it's almost validation and proof as to like why gender has always been so confusing to me on this planet.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're all both. Like
That's
we're all, some appear more masculine and some appear more feminine. And so I think what I'm getting to is that as we move from duality in the 3rd dimension into non-duality in the 5th, this is not the absence of these energies. This is the utmost coming back into wholeness and the balance of both of these energies. And I'm not saying everybody's going to be androgynous or gender fluid like I am. These energies will be so balanced that we don't have to have the utmost true separations and angst and pain that these separations currently are causing this planet.
Yes.
Everywhere in the world. And so this, as I've been remembering all of this the last several months, I've completely shifted my work as I'm remembering why I'm here to solely, I believe that I'm here to help people to remember this. And to help people to through the awakening process, because it is jarring. It it can be so uncomfortable. And for me, it can be uncomfortable too, because I still have 3D constructs. I still have the earth 3D constructs. I still have old programming. I still have my old knee-jerk reactions to things. And right now, we are experiencing a collective upheaval of all of these lower vibrations that no longer resonate to the frequency that we're moving to. And people are crying at the drop of a hat or for no reason at all, or they're spewing out this like anger or frustration emotion. It's not just because we're locked up and not able to see each other, folks. This stuff is being brought up on purpose so that we can clear it out of our bodies and move into this higher frequency where those vibrations can't exist. They can't exist there. So they have to come out. And so all the work that I'm doing with the podcast right now and Up and Awaken, which is my production company, essentially, it's just in its baby stages. This isn't like a following of thousands and millions of people, is creating tools to help people in their awakening process. Funny little animated videos reminding people that we are souls having a human experience. Free clearings on our YouTube channel where talk about fear. I just did a free fear clearing for the Up and Awaken Productions YouTube channel that anyone can watch. Maybe 5 people have watched it already. It's, but it's there because a lot of people are feeling fear right now. And so the whole structure of everything that I've been offering these last 6 years has shifted to basically being intuitive donation based, because I also think that is the way that we might be heading in this new world, and it's exciting to me. Sorry, I just kind of went off there. Is that okay?
No, I absolutely love it. And because the terminology has gone out there, and for those of people who think that it's weird or not right, let me just introduce you to Google. And I just Googled 5D reality just to see what would come up. And let me just read you a short paragraph. It says the 5D reality is the highest dimension you can shift to on Earth. On Earth. Being in the 5th.
Because there's more after that,
right,
just so you know.
But being in the 5th dimension means that you are resonating at an exceedingly high vibration. Now, what exactly is 5D reality, and how can you make that 5D consciousness shift? The 5th dimension is of unconditional love, peace, and happiness. So it isn't
sounds unattainable, doesn't it?
It sounds so beautiful, right, that we think that we can't have it, but we can. And what I love about this conversation and what Renata's doing and the work she's doing is this is what the energy of this world is presenting for us. If we can just get rid of the obstruction of what we believe. Like one of the reasons I'm so excited to have them on our show is because this is available if you get rid of the belief systems that say, no, this isn't possible. And even as Ren was listening to it, Ren said, it almost seems unattainable. But it isn't unattainable. It is unattainable in the package, in the container that we currently hold. But a lot of the work that I do with people, which we're very similar in, and not in the languaging, but in the work, it's just releasing and letting go of everything that currently fills our container so that we can allow a fresh new energy, whatever that energy is, whether that's around money, whether that's around romance, whether that's around business. When we start to realize that everything in this world is communicating to us, everything in this world has voice, the only reason we can't hear it is because we don't allow ourselves to hear it because of the belief system that it doesn't. So as you're listening to this podcast, I hope it is challenging you. I hope it is pushing you. And yet, the way Ren is saying it is so beautifully simple if you just listen to it without any obstruction. And if you have problems with this, then I want to invite you to contact Ren. Ren is easier to say than them or they, but I want
Hey, most people call me Ren. It's cool.
to, and
I love it.
so I want to invite you to contact Ren, because that's the work that they have given to them. I don't know if I'm using that correctly, but that's
I
what
think you got most of it.
that is what Ren is here to do. And so, yeah, it may feel different to you, but so what? Everything that has ever been new has been different at some point in time.
What's been interesting for me as you're talking to is that, you know, I joked about like coming out of the closet in terms of like many lives, many planets, you know. When I did that, I was surprised by how many people resonated with that on a
Yeah.
deep level. People who I would have thought maybe didn't have any kind, or maybe who don't have any kind of obvious spiritual practice or belief system or even religion or anything. I'm not religious. I never have been. So what's interesting to me is that many of your listeners may just resonate on a deep level
Completely.
with what we're talking about here. They may not, and there's no forcing anybody for anything. But what I mean to say is, what's been surprising to me is how many people are open to the things that I like to talk about and to help people through. That is what is truly incredible, is that like random people on the street, and I'm in Costa Rica right now and getting into conversations and the stuff inevitably comes up. People are like, yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
And it evokes something deeper than your ego and your personality in this human lifetime. It evokes something from your soul. And so, you know, I think for me, I'm speaking to folks' souls right now. I'm not speaking to your mind, and I'm not speaking to your ego, and I'm not speaking to your personality, or even to your lived experiences in this particular lifetime on this particular planet. I'm speaking to your soul. And so it's a take it or leave it situation. There's no, you know, there's nothing either way. And
so I want
following.
to offer a slightly different perspective, because I don't think it's a take it or leave it. I want to say to you, even if you don't understand it right now, that's okay. Even if you don't believe it right now, that's okay. Come back to it. Let it just take a look at what blocks you from believing new things, not just in this conversation, in every conversation. And swipe left. Just allow yourself to remove all that for a moment. You don't have to agree. You don't have to choose to live your life this way. But allow yourself to receive new information. Because I believe, like Ren believes, that if you stop the resistance, you might find there's actual attunement. And how beautiful it would be to allow yourself to actually come in contact with what you yourself actually believe. Not because someone else told you to, but just because when the resistance is gone, the resonance is present. And if it doesn't resonate, we'll have more podcasts you can listen to. Okay, but if it does resonate, Ren, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, if people are interested in what you and I are talking about right now, I just want to say my podcast is called Let's Get Metaphysical, and it's available everywhere you can get podcasts. So if this is resonating with you for some reason, this is what it's this kind of stuff that we talk about on my podcast much of the time. So check out that. Let's
sign up and subscribe. Let's Get Metaphysical podcast.
And there's a few other ways right now to get in touch. I went from seeing clients almost 90% of my time for my job to now almost spending like 75% of my time creating content or doing clearings and putting that out there. And that's kind of the shift that's happened since we've been inside, and since I've been remembering why I'm here. So I have a YouTube channel called Up Awaken Productions. So subscribe to that. There's not much there now. There's there's 3 videos now, and there's going to be more and more and more, because every single day I wake up and my guides are saying, do a clearing on this, do a clearing on that, make this animated video to help people remember. And so I just can't keep up with what I'm supposed to be doing right now, but they will all go there. That's the Up Awaken Productions YouTube channel. And that's free. So that, like, getting it, the podcast is free. These things are free. And then I have a Patreon community that's also called Up and Awaken. I started it originally for the podcast, to sustain the podcast. I don't know if many of you listeners know, but most of us podcasters do not get paid for the content that we create and put out to the world. It is a labor of love. It's a labor of passion. And so some people create Patreon accounts. So I have a Patreon community that I offer live interaction with me and healings and gifts to my patrons, but mostly it's a community where people who are in the awakening process and would like support with that, and to have a community around that, can have a community around that. And that can be found at Patreon, patreon.com/letsgetmeta. And I'd love for you to join our community. It's a small and mighty community at the moment, but everything is shifting right now. And it's just to be there, to both be supported for the content that I'm creating, and to support you in your awakening process. So just to be clear, let me just make sure, because I've got so many things here that I'm a little confused. There's www.letsgetmetapodcast.com. That's the podcast website, is www.letsgetmetapodcast.com, and then the Patreon. Pause. And then there's www.patreon.com/letsgetmeta. That's the community. That's the community. And finally, go ahead. Finally, for everything else, and I'm for everything else, and you can get all this information on this website, is renatamaniaci.com, and that's where, if you are interested, you can sign up for a session with me. I call them wake up calls, and those again are intuitive donation based. When you sign up, you pay $10 just to make you accountable to show up for the session. We do a session, and then afterwards you go inside and you say, what is the best energetic exchange to complete this session, and then you send that to me for. And so what is upandawaken.com? That's also another website that you have? Or can I get them? So many things. Now this is making me think I need to consolidate everything. Yeah, I want you to send them to one place that has everything. Can I get that at renatamaniaci.com? Maniaci.com. Yes, that will. Yeah, you will be able to get to everything from there. Absolutely. Okay. So it's not confusing for people. I'll list all the other ones, but www.upandawaken.com is also the right. I have that URL, and I have not made a website for it yet. Okay. All right. So then I'm going to take that off, because I will probably just connect that to my Renata Maniaci.com. I thought you mentioned URL. that was there. Okay. Thank you. No problem. I close every conversation with the same question, and I would love to ask you that question and see where it goes, because everything about this conversation has been so unique and interesting that I'd be interested on your take. When you look out, Ren, at the world you see, is this the world that you always dreamed you'd hand over to future generations? In its current state, no. And we're going to get there in my lifetime. Love it. What would be one thing that you could invite people to do right now, every day, that would help take it from its current manifestation to the place that it will get to in your lifetime? visualize exactly the world that you want to live in and talk about it and draw it and write it down. And don't put in anything that you don't want. Don't say, I don't want this. Focus on what you do want and speak it, write it, draw it, because that's putting it out into the universe so that the universe can be like, oh, you want that? Let's do that.
Love it.
So every single day, envision the world that you want to live in, and do more than envision it. Put that into a physical form by speaking it or writing it or drawing it.
I want to thank you.
Or singing it or shouting it. Sorry.
I know, that's okay. I want to thank you so much for your time. And if I can just summarize for people that have been guests of the Mosaic podcast, I love this podcast. And I love in particular this one that we just had today. What Ren has done is really exactly what she's asking the world to do, is really exactly what they're asking the world to do. Ren has created the world that Ren wants to live in by animating it, by podcasting about it, by coming on to podcasts like this and speaking about it, by creating it through her visualizations and her and their thoughts. And whether it feels awkward to you or not, just start to do it. Some of the conversations we've had today may be stretching you, and some of it may not stretch you at all. Like, I'm so protective of you as a listening community, and I don't want to have to protect you. I want to invite you to people who think differently and see differently. I want you to be a fly on the wall so that you meet friends of mine who I've allowed to influence me and allowed to have conversations with that have spread my mind and opened my heart and touched my soul. If we continue to see things the way we always see them, the world we see will never change. So the most beautiful thing in the world we can do is have conversations with people who see the world differently than we see them. But not conversations with how do we defend the way we see our world. Conversations that invite the opinions of other people and the expressions and the knowledge of other people into our life. In my nearly 65 years of being on the planet, no one has ever asked me and told me, you must agree with me. Never. All any of us have wanted is to be loved and accepted, listened to and heard, acknowledged and validated. What I'm asking you to do with the information you received today is love and accept it, listen to it and hear it, acknowledge it and validate it. And then let it seep into you in the way it wants to. If everything comes in and goes right out, so be it. But if it enters you and touches you in any small corner or large valley of your soul, let it be there. And if it does, the resources are all here in the show notes. Choose to go to any and all of them, because I believe Ren is on to something of a new world. I invite you to seek out Ren's counsel. They have made it very easy. Yes, I want to say the old language. They have made it so easy for you to do so by charging so very little. Take the experiment and expand your mind, expand your heart, expand your soul beyond what it is you know. Who knows? Maybe you'll come out of a closet that you never even knew you were in. Maybe you'll see the world in a way that's different than you ever imagined. Maybe some of the fears that you experience will vanish, just like Ren's vanished. If that's the case, I couldn't be happier for this podcast. For those of you who give the value of your time to us always, I thank you again for joining us. Ren, I thank you so much for being with us, for having the courage to stand in your closet and walk out, to invite people to have the opportunity to hear things that resonate with them deeply, that they never would have the opportunity to hear before. And I invite those of you who have listened to this to love it, to 5-star it on Apple Podcasts, to comment and contact Ren. Work together. When we become one reality, the reality that we become is so much bigger than the reality we know now. Step into it. Thank you again, Ren.
Thank you so much, Danny. It's been such a pleasure. My heart expands every time I see you, and I just feel like cheering after everything that you just said. I feel like it needs like a woo, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for occupying the space that you occupy in this world. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's my honor to have you in this space with me. So for those of you, thank you again for coming. I look forward to seeing you again on the next podcast. And please comment and please let us know how you feel. Okay, until next time, big blessings.